Since introducing the ORI Generation 3 race strut, we have found the need to do some tuning to it from time to time. As we've raced King of Hammers and other races, we've also raced Folsom. You can see that this was pretty beat up after all the sandblasting from Hammers. But this is a Generation 3, so we're going to discuss today how to change the second stage valving without having to remove the strut from the car. And the reason we do this is to give us a little slower, a little earlier damping stage, so that not all of the damping occurs in the third stage. With the Generation 2 and Generation 3, both are adjustable from the bottom, 24 position clicker. And what we found with the introduction of Generation 3 is that you had to almost have this all the way adjusted to the end of its adjustment range to get the damping that you wanted. So by changing the second stage valving, we now can back off the third stage damping to more for a lot closer to the middle of its range. And to do that, we're going to show you a little bit here. These are the internals of the both Gen 2 and Gen 3 struts. First stage is a velocity sensing compression valve that closes only when it's needed. It's kept open with springs. The oil then flows to the reservoir where the second and third stage valves are. We're not going to change anything to the third stage valve, but we are going to make a change to the second stage valve. And we will show you how that's done. The valves we just showed you, now these are from a Generation 2. This is a third stage valve that is adjustable. A metering needle will actually close off that hole to whatever position you have the 24 settings set at. The second stage valve is a 4-hole valve. We're going to remove this from the reservoir and plug one of the holes. We'll show you how that's going to be done. It's important to understand as well that each of these 3 stages are both velocity sensing and position sensing. As you can see, as the piston shaft advances up, they're forcing oil through each one of these valves, and each one, as the oil fills its chamber, will close the valve. So that makes it the position sensing. The tension of the springs, these 2 springs that you see here, determine the velocity sensing. The stronger the spring, the longer it takes that valve to close. The same with the third stage. And in our race car, we prefer to leave this alone. We like the valving that we have in the first stage. And the second stage, we're going to go to a medium strength spring. In the third stage, we're going to leave the stiff spring. You see that we have 3 different spring rates. The soft spring is white, the medium spring is blue, and the stiffest or the hard spring is red. And the harder the spring that you put into the reservoir, the slower it will, or the longer it will take for that valve to close and give you that damping. Until that spring is compressed, it remains open. And what this does, by having the velocity sensing in the valving, we're able to keep a nice smooth ride in the choppy stuff or the rough. And then the valve only closes when you hit the strut hard enough to force against the spring and close the valve. In our race car, like I said, we like to keep the third stage hard because we push pretty hard in our struts. As they come from the factory, they will all come with the blue medium spring in the second stage and in the third stage. Now, I know this may sound confusing and counterintuitive. The soft spring will give you a stiffer ride. Medium spring in between. The hard spring will give you a softer ride. And the reason for that is because it takes longer for the valve to close. This will be the third stage. It's harder to close that valve against a stiff spring. It takes more hydraulic force coming through the passageways to close this valve and engage the compression damping. As long as the valve is held open, you have free-flowing oil all the way through the reservoir, which will give you a softer ride. So once again, if you had this soft spring in the third stage, the valve will close very easily, and even the smallest of bumps that you hit in the road would engage the compression damping and stiffen the ride. So like I said, for our car, we use a medium spring in the second stage and the hard spring in the third. To make this easier, we jack up the car, we leave it on jacks, so that when we vent the pressure out of the strut, which is very important, don't try to unscrew the reservoir with pressure in it. So we jack up the car so the strut's not going to collapse and push pressure and oil out of the vent valve. So we'll begin. We've already put the car up on jacks. Now we're going to vent the strut, remove the Schrader valve. All right, first step, and it's an important safety step, we're going to vent the pressure out of the entire strut. We can do that here at this Schrader valve. I like to use a valve connector, it just makes things easier. You can push any kind of a pin in there to vent it. And I want to capture the oil, any oil that might come out of the strut. Oh. Vent it slowly, not like I did. And we'll try to spit some oil at the end. Because as the pressure is released from the body of the strut, the oil will cavitate and foam. So I just slow it down a little bit. We always lose a little bit of oil. That's why I like to capture it. And make sure that all the pressure is vented before you try to unscrew the reservoir. Or you will have an explosion of oil in your face. Okay, it looks like we're there. Close the valve. And that's how much oil we lost just venting it.
How many cc's?
Yeah, let's see what we got here. Doesn't even hardly register. Maybe 20, 30 cc's. Set that here for now. Remove our valve connector. And once again, you don't have to use a valve connector to vent it. You can do it anyway. That's handy. Then we'll use a strap wrench to remove the reservoir. It should unscrew easily. I like to unscrew it from here. If you attach the strap wrench down here, you'll remove the cap. We don't need to do that. We want to remove the entire reservoir. You can see there's quite a bit of dirt still on this from our last race. And when this comes off, we want to make sure the damping case stack is with it. Sometimes it'll hang up and stick in the upper cap. We'll just pull it off. It's all together. And we'll take this to the bench. keep that there for now. I'm going to try to keep things clean and not let any of the dirt that's on the outside of this reservoir get inside. Looks like part of my stack fell inside. I'll try to get it all back. This pushes into a draw cup in the bottom. But I have a problem, so I'm going to pull this all completely apart and drain the oil. The draw cup remained inside, so we need to get that out. Let's drain this oil. There's the draw cup. That's what we're looking for. I'm going to let that fall onto the bench. Finish draining the oil. And this only pushes in tension on the O-ring. There. So this is the entire damping stack assembly, the damping stack assembly. Now the second stage valve is inside the hanger plate. So we're going to unscrew this. You should be able to do it with hand pressure. There's the blue spring we talked about. And as I mentioned before, the red spring is here in the third stage. We don't need to take this apart unless you want to change that spring. This would be our red spring, although it's not painted red, not yet. But we're going to keep the stiffer spring in that third stage, and I believe it's the same one. And there's not a lot of difference in these different stages. And there's the single hole valve that we showed you earlier, and that is the third stage adjustable stage, and we're not changing anything there. And this only needs to go together hand tight. Once the entire assembly is put back together, it'll remain tight. But we need to remove this valve. This is the second stage valve. And it might be a little troublesome getting that out of there. If you have it rocked even a little bit, one side or the other, it will hang up. Sometimes easier. There we go. All right, let's just wipe this off a little bit. You can see the difference between the Generation 3 and the Generation 2. The biggest difference between these two struts is that we allow almost 100% more return oil volume to go between the reservoir and the main body of the strut. And that was done to prevent packing when you're going through whoops in the desert. So the Generation 3 is designed to allow far more oil flow than the Generation 2 did. Although Generation 2 works just fine for most applications. For racing, we really recommend you go to the Generation 3 valving. So what we're going to do now is we're going to plug one of those holes. You need to find a 1/4 28, that's a fine pitch 1/4 inch tap. 1/4 28. And plug any one of these 4 holes with a set screw. And you don't want the tap all the way through, because we want to be able to tighten the set screw in the hole. Make sure it's straight. We want to tighten that set screw in the hole so that it's not loose, of course. I'm going to go down a little bit, clean it off. I'm going to find us a set screw. I need to clean this. This will be clean so that we can apply some blue Loctite. And we need to get us a 1/4 28 set screw, fine pitch, short. These are about 1/4 inch long. And screw that into the hole. I want this to end up about flush. You can see it's tightening it up. It's not quite flush yet. So I'll go a little deeper with a tap. Sneak up on it. That's one more turn. Once again, I don't want to have that contaminated with oil. Well, the Loctite won't do any good. We'll clean it again. And let's see if we have it where we want. And it tightens up right there flush. That's perfect. And go in from this side where you see the boss sticking up. This little boss is only sticking up about 50/1000ths of an inch. And so tap it from this side. The reason we do that is that if this set screw does happen to come out, it will stay in the reservoir and not find its way up into the main body of the strut. So now we'll take some Loctite. This is medium strength blue Loctite. Just a drop or two will be more than enough. Run that into the hole. Tighten it up. Wipe off the excess. And we're ready for reassembly. It's important that this valve be installed in this direction, because as you can see, this 50/1000ths tall boss, what slips into the hole in the damping case and seals everything off when the valve closes. Put our blue spring back in. You can see what we were talking about. When the damping case fills, this valve will close against that medium strength spring, and all of these holes will block off, and only the 3 holes remaining will be used for the damping. Now we need to get this in here somehow. Evenly. There we go. It's back into the hanger plate. You can screw all that back together, hand tight again. And all this is hand tight. The draw cup is into the pipe and it's just pushed in. And when we put this back in the reservoir, first of all, we want to pour all of the oil we drained back into the reservoir, which includes the oil that we vented. Now, this is very important. When you push this into the assembly, you see a brass tube in the reservoir that aligns with the Schrader valve. The slot in the draw cup needs to align with the brass tube. We simply drop that in carefully. And if everything is done correctly, you have just a little bit of a lead sticking up. And you notice there's a spring. This is what keeps the assembly tight when we put it together. Notice we only had to go hand tight with all the damping stack A spring inside the assembly keeps things tight. We're ready to install this back onto the car.
O-ring still in there?
Yeah, good idea. You can see the O-ring is still there. Sometimes that could fall out. Just make sure that that's in there and seated the way that it should be. I can screw this stack back into place. There we go. And incidentally, this tuning change by plugging that hole is primarily for customers that have the current Gen 3 struts, and starting in about August, these will come already valved with only 3 holes in the second stage. August of 25. And this does not need to be very tight. We're good. And we're ready to pressurize the strut and get it back in action. And that's it. Thank you for watching.